and welcome back to the Today Show. In this exclusive episode, we'll be discussing the controversial topic of genetically modified foods. As many of you already know, Governor of Connecticut, Daniel Malloy, recently passed a bill requiring all genetically modified foods to be labeled, although there is a catch with this bill. The rules of this law will only come intact when at least 4 other states pass similar laws. There's also a requirement that any combination of northeastern states that together reside 20 million people must also pass similar laws in order for the Connecticut bill to take effect. In order for GMOs to be made, a restriction enzyme reads through a strand of DNA searching for a specific sequence. Once the sequence is identified, the enzyme then cuts the strand. This is now called the recombinant DNA. The recombinant DNA is then inserted into a plasmid, now being called a recombinant plasmid, and changing the gene. Here with us today we have environmentalist Lily Bello, farmer Mariana Garcia, and scientist Paul Wheatley. Let's speak with Paul Let's speak with Paul first. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Laura. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, Paul. So getting right to the topic, what do you think of the claims of scientists that GMOs are safe for humans and animals to consume?
I believe that many of the claims of there being scientific consensus that GMOs are safe are misleading and misrepresented by the current available scientific evidence on the safety of GMOs. Also, there is a broad diversity of opinions among the scientists on their ever-expanding issue.
And what is your personal opinion on the safety of GMOs?
My personal opinion on GMOs is that they are both harmful and helpful. The reason I have mixed opinions on GMOs is because they are helpful to the public health and they also have increased the food production. On the downside, there are proven environmental risks for farming GMOs.
Can you identify some of the potential environmental risks that can occur from farming GM crops?
Definitely. One big concern of farming genetically modified crops is the effect that chemical pesticides and herbicides have on the population of insects such as bees and butterflies. The large amount of pesticides used to kill weeds have been crossbred with genetically modified plants is a big concern.
There are also many mixed opinions on the new bill passed by Daniel Malloy regarding labeling if the products are genetically modified. What do you think of this new bill?
I am all for this new bill. I believe that people should be able to know what they are eating. There is also a risk of an allergic reaction or the possibility of developing serious diseases if people are not warned on the label. Plus, many people know of the benefits and the cons of consuming genetically modified crops and should be able to decide whether they want it for themselves.
There have also been many claims by companies that GMOs have benefited the public health. Can you explain any of these benefits?
Yes. The way that GMOs benefit the public health is by increasing the nutritional value of the foods. The way they increase the nutritional value is by changing a gene and making it easier or possible for the humans to digest. Also, it benefits the public health because genetically modified crops stay ripe longer. This is done by reducing a gene that ripens the tomato, therefore allowing it to stay on the vine longer and to maintain health longer.
I have heard that there have also been financial impacts from the production of GMOs. What kind of financial impact has there been involving the production of GMOs?
Well, there has been a positive impact on the amount of food produced in the U.S. because of GMOs. The U.S. now produces 17% more food than it needs to feed every American 3 meals a day, rather than much less before the production of GMOs has begun.
All right, thank you so much, Paul, for your unbiased point of view and time. Now we'll be hearing from a farmer, Mariana. Hello, Mariana. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too, Laura.
So, Mariana, what is your stand on genetically modified foods, and why do you believe in your stand?
My stand is I am for the production of genetically modified foods because they help my crops and plants become resistant to diseases. Like for corn, it is vulnerable to many pests and diseases, so genetically modifying helps corn become resistant to those pesky pests. Also, by genetically modifying foods, it makes them more flavorful, and the flavors can be enhanced. A benefit of genetically modified foods is they can have vitamins and minerals that give people more nutritional value who eats them. These nutrients are added during the modification. Finally, genetic modification of plants has the potential to provide plant vaccines that can immunize individuals against disease and infections.
Wow, that's some great information to know about the pros of genetically modified foods. Now, Mariana, how has genetic modification helped farmers in developing countries?
Well, genetic modification helps developing countries by generating strategies for crop improvements that can be applied to many different crops. Potato and cotton are used for commercial production, and these strategies are important for tropical regions and other regions throughout the world. Genetic modification helps delay ripening and has an enormous potential for tropical fruit crops that usually suffer severe losses in developing countries because they ripen rapidly.
That's very interesting. Are there any other reasons why genetic modification helps developing countries?
Yes, there is. It also helps developing countries because there is an economic benefit for farmers planting genetically modified crops. It is raised less expensively, which really helps farmers around the world. Finally, it helps developing countries by withstanding environmental stresses. Genes that can survive water stress in desert conditions are used in genetic modification. It allows rice to be protected from dehydration to survive drought in countries.
Thanks for that information. It's good to know how it helps developing countries around the world. One final thing I have to ask is, how do you stand with labeling genetically modified foods?
I am strongly against labeling. As farmers and companies, we don't need to label foods because GM crops are not substantially different from other crops that aren't genetically modified. Also, labeling foods could violate interstate commerce laws on the right that is interfere with farmers and the food industry's ability to sell its products. Finally, labeling genetically modified foods would be cumbersome and costly and would raise food prices. That's something that buyers wouldn't want and could hurt us as farmers and companies.
Thank you, Mariana, for your time and your responses. Good luck. Now we're visiting an environmental campaigner named Lily. Welcome to the show.
Hi Laura, nice to see you. Thank you for inviting me.
Glad to have you. From what I've heard, you're against the action of genetically modified foods becoming legal.
Absolutely.
Why is that?
Well, GM foods are bad for the environment and for humans for many reasons. They have caused an increase of food allergies through the years. About 5% of the population now has a food allergy. The foods could potentially have less nutritional value to humans because humans would be unable to digest all of the nutrients that are made in the plants as a result of the DNA being changed. Also, it is not proven that GM foods help or benefit consumers because not enough research has been done on these types of foods and their effects on the human body. For the most part, GM foods have been found to cause problems and are banned in the majority of countries, such as Italy, Germany, Greece, and many others.
Wow, you're really against these foods. Now, what are some of the negative effects that genetically modified foods have on the environment?
Well, one effect that GM foods have on the environment is that they're contaminating the earth, and this cannot be reversed. Once the seed for a GM crop is produced, that means that the modified gene is out there for good. Although it will produce that one crop with a genetically modified plant, the GM seeds cross-pollinate with natural plants. This cannot be stopped, and now that it has happened, it is out of our control. This new breed of crops between the GM crops and the natural crops were never intended, so the result is unknown, and these can definitely cause problems that were not anticipated. It's impossible for us to clean up the contaminated gene pool that we have mistakenly created.
Are there any other known effects on the environment?
Yes, there are. These GM foods cause less biodiversity and cause pollution. They cause less biodiversity because they are created rather than grown naturally. They cause pollution because since the weeds are mixing with the GM crops, they have resulted in super weeds that are more resistant to pesticides but are still weeds. These require more pesticide to be applied to kill the weeds and therefore more pollution from them.
That seems dangerous. So, what do you think? Should foods that contain genetically modified crops be required to be labeled or no?
I think that foods containing genetically modified crops should be labeled because people should be able to know what they're putting into their bodies. These GM foods are dangerous to people, and if people are more aware of this fact, then they can protect themselves. Also, since the foods contaminating GMOs are not labeled, people have to be especially more aware if they care to protect themselves. If they were labeled, then it would be easier for people who want to know, and people who do not care will ignore the labels anyways.
Alright, Lily, thank you for talking.
No problem, Laura.
This is the end of our segment today. Thank you for watching, and make sure to keep an eye out for more information on the GMO bill that may or may not be passed in the near future.
Elsa?
Three meals a day. Rather.
Peace.
Hi.
Let's hike to the farm. Let's hike to the farm. Let's hike to the farm.
Again.
I want to live in a barn.
Oh, cowgirl. Oh no, my head!
America, the chosen. Guns, explosions. Hi, Paul.
Okay.
Someone get me a barn. I want a barn. America. I feel like I should just be blasting like the Pledge of Allegiance right now.